I've seen the
Not really.
The Central Pacific nation is now worse than broke.
visual loss and blindness, kidney failure, heart attacks, loss of limbs. So the Nauruans could be one of the sickest nations in the world.
Nauru is a small island paradise formerly basked in the splendor of its glittering wealth. However, fate had a mischievous plan in store for this enchanting land as it embarked on a roller coaster journey from riches to rags, captivating the world with its dramatic tale of rise and fall. Nauru's fall from grace was swift and unforgiving. It had its heyday, all thanks to its phosphate wealth. But like a wild roller coaster, its fortune took a nosedive, leaving everyone in disbelief. The once luxurious lifestyle vanished, and the island faced the harsh reality of relying on a dwindling resource. This is a cautionary tale of boom and bust, reminding us that even the shiniest things can fade away in a blink. But how did Nauru rise to the position of the richest nation on Earth? What blunders did they commit that caused them to waste this wealth? And how could this tiny nation truly become worse off over time? Let's find out. Nauru was a jewel of an island nestled amidst the boundless expanse of the Pacific Ocean, inhabited by Micronesian and Polynesian peoples for thousands of years. Nauru experienced a significant shift after World War I, becoming a League of Nations mandate governed by Australia, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. Later, the island was occupied by Japan during World War II, which caused significant loss and harm. However, the resilient spirit of the Nauruan people allowed them to rebuild and forge a bright future. This little island became independent in 1968 as the Republic of Nauru. Back in the 80s, they were crazy rich because of their phosphate deposits. But sadly, all that mining messed up their environment and economy. And now, Nauru faces some tough challenges like poverty, obesity, diabetes, and climate change. But how did they even become so rich in the first place? Back in the early 80s, Nauru hit the jackpot and became the absolute boss of wealth. You know how they did it? Phosphate mining. Sorry to disappoint you if you were expecting gold or diamonds. Well, phosphate is a lot cooler. Phosphate is this unique mineral that's used to make fertilizers and all sorts of other cool stuff. And guess what? Nauru had massive deposits of it just chilling out on the island. But get this, those deposits weren't just any old rocks. Nope, they were actually made from the guano, aka bird droppings, that had been piling up on Nauru's island for thousands of years. Who would have thought bird waste could bring in so much money? Back in the day, Nauru was like the money-making machine of the Pacific. Their government raked in a whopping $123 million each year just from selling phosphate. That's like a sweet $27,000 for every man, woman, and kid on the island. And get this, they didn't even have to pay any taxes. Wow, talk about living the dream. But the good times couldn't last forever. By the end of the 20th century, those precious phosphate reserves had run bone dry. It was like the end of an era, and things took a turn for the worst. But what could have led to this tragic shift? Well, they started to make wrong decisions. You see, Nauru was raking in the big bucks from phosphate like nobody's business. They were swimming in cash, but here's where things took a bit of a twist. They had this tiny problem. They couldn't resist spending more than they were earning from all that phosphate goodness. To make matters worse, they didn't think to mix it up and invest in other industries that could keep the cash flowing once the phosphate well ran dry. It's like putting all your eggs in one basket and hoping for the best. So, you can probably guess what happened next. When the phosphate party came to an end, Nauru found itself in a bit of a pickle. Their economy was all tied up with that one resource, and they didn't have a backup plan. They mismanaged their trust funds and public finances, making questionable investments like a musical, hotel chain, airline, and property portfolio. These ventures resulted in huge losses and a flurry of lawsuits. Due to bad management, low occupancy, and legal problems, Nauru lost its hotel chain. The Nauru House Hotel Network operated a number of properties in Australia, Fiji, Kiribati, and Nauru. Some of the hotels included the Nauru Phosphate Hotel in Melbourne, a 52-story tower constructed in 1977 at a cost of a 40 million Australian dollars and sold for a 140 million Australian dollars in 2004 to pay off Nauru's debts. There was just one hotel on the island of Nauru, and it had 119 rooms. But due to low occupancy and poor upkeep, it was also closed in 2006 but eventually reopened as the Menin Apartments in 2011. Nauru had all this crazy wealth at their fingertips, but they kind of dropped the ball when it came to taking care of their environment and the well-being of their people. They had the means to make a real difference, but they didn't prioritize rehabilitating their land or boosting their health and education systems. It's like having a fancy sports car, but never bothering to take it for a spin or even give it a wash. Not cool, right? Environmental degradation ran rampant, turning their beautiful island paradise into a bit of a mess. And that's not all. Social problems started cropping up left and right, and their human development outcomes took a sharp decline. It's like they had all the ingredients for success, but they forgot to turn on the stove. What about all that phosphate money? Nauru spent its phosphate money on a variety of things, some of which were good and others of which were wasteful. Okay, so first off, they were kind of smart about it. They knew that the phosphate boom wouldn't last forever, so they decided to stash some of that cash in trust funds. It was like their way of preparing for the future and making sure they had a soft landing when the phosphate party ended. Smart move, right? But here's where things got a little wacky. They invested in a musical. And guess what? It was a total mess. Leonardo the Musical, A Portrait of Love, was centered around the life of renowned Italian artist and inventor Leonardo da Vinci. And guess how much Nauru invested? About $7 million. Not a smart move at all. And to make matters worse, the musical was a disaster, with negative reviews and low attendance. And you know what follows? Nauru lost most of its investment. What else did they do with the money? Well, they gave out royalties to the landowners and residents of Nauru, and this created a culture of dependency and complacency. Of course, it was yet another bad decision, and it came with some serious downsides. It led to all sorts of social problems popping up, like obesity, diabetes, alcoholism, and even crime. Nauru also used some of the income from phosphates to fund public services and infrastructure like education, healthcare, housing, electricity, water, telecommunications, and transportation. However, these services and infrastructure were often inadequate or poorly maintained due to corruption and mismanagement. Nauru had been through almost a century of phosphate strip mining, and they decided to take matters to the International Court of Justice. They were like, hey, we need some serious compensation for all the damage caused. Now, here's where things get interesting. Australia, being one of the key players in this phosphate game, offered Nauru an out-of-court settlement. They whipped out their checkbook and said, here's $2.5 million for every year for 20 years. That money was supposed to be used for two important things: environmental rehabilitation and economic development. But there's little evidence to show that much progress was made in these areas. It's like the money disappeared into thin air. And what did all these bad decisions mean for the people living in Nauru and its economy? Nauru made some seriously bad decisions that wreaked havoc on their economy and the people living there. Their decisions depleted their natural resources, leaving the land barren and the environment in shambles. The island suffered big time, with water shortages and even a loss of precious biodiversity. Talk about a tough blow. They ended up relying on foreign aid and loans just to keep their heads above water. But wait, it gets even crazier. To raise some quick cash, they dabbled in some shady business. We're talking about money laundering, tax evasion, and even selling passports. It's like they were trying every trick in the book. They also faced political instability, corruption, and human rights violations. Because of its lack of regulation, desperation for income, and willingness to cooperate with dubious businesses, Nauru became involved in money laundering. It allowed the establishment of offshore banks with no physical presence in Nauru or any other country, as well as no regulation or monitoring from Nauruan authorities. Criminals and corrupt officials from several nations, including Russia, Ukraine, China, and Colombia, used these banks to hide and transfer their illicit funds. Nauru made it easy to shell up businesses and trusts that could be formed in Nauru for a fee and open accounts in Nauruan banks or elsewhere without revealing their beneficial owners for sources of funding. These organizations were used to avoid paying taxes, launder money, and finance terrorists. It also worked with other countries and organizations that were sanctioned or under international scrutiny, such as Iraq, North Korea, and Hezbollah, to provide financial and diplomatic support, all in desperation to raise funds. These wrong moves had a lasting effect, and Nauru paid the price. And how about their GDP? Back in 1973, their GDP hit a whopping $1.7 billion. They were living the high life in one of the richest countries per person on the planet. But when the phosphate mining declined and trust funds ran dry, their GDP went into freefall. By 2006, it had collapsed to $20 million. A true description of moving from riches to rags in a heartbeat. Although due to some foreign aid and other income sources, their GDP had made a bit of a comeback. But let's face it, they've got a long way to go to reach their former glory days. Life's all about the ups and downs, and Nauru had its fair share. Do you think they can get back to their good old days? Let us know what you think in the comment section. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay up to date on the latest news about what's happening in the world today. Thanks for watching.